Assalamu alaikum, let's dive into this amazing story together. Hey, so, you want to know about Zakat? It's a really fascinating topic. Actually, because it's not just some dusty old religious rule. It's something that's been alive throughout Islamic history, constantly adapting and changing alongside the societies that practiced it. It's a pillar of Islam. One of the five. Remember? Shahada, Salat, Saum, Zakat, Hajj. But Zakat, well, it's more than just a ritual. It's incredibly important, and understanding its evolution is key to understanding the whole history of Islam itself. Think of it this way. Zakat isn't just about giving money to the poor. It's a complex system that's woven into the very fabric of Islamic society. Designed to address economic inequality, promote social justice, and ensure a basic level of welfare for everyone. Imagine the early Muslim community in Medina, a fledgling society, facing all sorts of challenges. They needed a system to help those struggling, to build community, to solidify their identity and their strength. Zakat was that system. In the Quran, the foundation is laid out pretty simply. The wealthy are obligated to give a portion of their wealth to the needy. But, wealth and needy are pretty broad terms. Right? And what constitutes a portion? That's where the evolution comes in. The early caliphs, the successors to the Prophet Muhammad, faced the practical challenge of defining these concepts. They had to figure out what kinds of wealth qualified. Was it just gold and silver? What about livestock, crops, or even business profits? Different opinions arose. Some were more literal interpretations of the Quranic verses. Others were more carnal, taking into account the realities of the growing Muslim empire and its diverse populations. Imagine the sheer logistical challenge. The empire expanded incredibly quickly. You are going from small communities in Arabia to vast territories across North Africa, the Middle East, and beyond. Suddenly you are dealing with different agricultural systems, different economic structures, different levels of wealth. How do you apply Zakat fairly and consistently across such diverse regions? This led to ongoing discussions and interpretations amongst religious scholars, the ulama, who wrestled with these questions for centuries. Take the nisab, for instance. That's the minimum threshold of wealth that triggers the obligation of paying zakat. Defining that threshold wasn't easy, and different schools of thought emerged, each with slightly different calculations the value of silver and gold at the time. It wasn't a fixed number, it changed over time to reflect economic realities. Think about inflation. That's a modern concept, but the principle is the same. You need to adjust the system to account for changes in the value of money. Then there's the question of who receives the zakat. The Quran mentions specific groups: the poor, the needy, those in debt, travelers, and those working to collect zakat itself. But again, interpreting these categories required ongoing debate and adaptation. Who exactly counts as poor? What constitutes need? How do you fairly distribute the funds? This has led to the development of complex systems of zakat collection and distribution, often administered by local communities or religious institutions. Throughout history, different schools of Islamic jurisprudence, like the Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali schools, developed their own interpretations of zakat laws. These differences reflect the diverse socio-economic cons in which Islam spread. A system that worked effectively in a primarily agricultural society might need adjustments to function in a bustling urban center, or in a society undergoing rapid industrialization. And it's not just about the technical details. The spirit asterisk of Zakat also evolved. While the initial was on direct relief of poverty, the practice over time encompassed broader social and economic goals. Zakat started to be seen as a means to promote economic growth, social cohesion, and even environmental sustainability. In some societies, Zakat funds were used to build infrastructure, support education, or even fund charitable hospitals. Even today, there are ongoing discussions about the most effective ways to implement Zakat in the modern world. With globalization and the rise of global financial markets, the challenge of defining wealth and ensuring fair distribution becomes even more complex. How do you apply the principles of Zakat to assets like stocks, cryptocurrency, and intellectual property? These are questions that Islamic scholars and communities are grappling with even now. So, see, Zakat isn't static. It's a dynamic system that has adapted and changed throughout Islamic history, reflecting the changing needs and realities of Muslim societies. It's a story of interpretation, adaptation, and ongoing debate, a living testament to the enduring relevance of Islamic principles in a constantly evolving world. It's a fascinating journey, and just scratching the surface makes me want to delve deeper. Want to hear more about a specific aspect? Maybe the role of Zakat in the development of Waqf, endowments, or the challenges of Zakat implementation in modern Muslim states? Hey, so you want to know about Zakat? It's fascinating, really. It's not just some old religious tax. It's a whole story, a thread woven through Islamic history, reflecting the changing societies and circumstances of Muslim communities. Think back to the very beginning, to the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in Medina. Picture this: a small, newly formed community, struggling to build a just and equitable society amidst various tribes and groups. Some wealthy, many struggling to survive. Zakat, right from the start, wasn't just about collecting money, it was foundational. It was about establishing a social safety net. It was the social safety net. The Quran lays out the basics pretty clearly. Certain assets, like wealth, livestock, and agricultural produce, if they reach a specific threshold, a certain level of surplus, then a portion is due as zakat. It wasn't arbitrary. It was designed to help those less fortunate, the poor, the needy, those in debt, travelers, and even to free slaves. It was about redistribution, plain and simple. Imagine how revolutionary that must have felt, a system built into the very fabric of their religious practice that aimed to actively tackle inequality. But the how wasn't always straightforward. Early Islamic society was largely agrarian. So zakat calculations were things like the number of camels, sheep, and the yield of date palms. It was a pretty hands-on system, deeply ingrained in their daily lives. The Prophet himself oversaw the collection and distribution, ensuring transparency and fairness. Think of it as a highly organized charity drive, but with clear religious and legal backing, not just goodwill. As Islam spread, so did the complexity of zakat. The early caliphates saw vast new territories and economies added to the Muslim world. Suddenly you are dealing with bustling cities, sophisticated trade routes, and a far more diverse range of wealth, not just livestock and crops, but also gold, silver, and eventually, the fruits of global commerce. This meant that interpretations of what constituted nisab, the minimum threshold for zakat liability, had to evolve. Scholars began to engage in detailed legal discussions, debating the nuances of different types of wealth, the appropriate rates of zakat, and the best ways to ensure its just distribution. Different schools of Islamic jurisprudence, like the Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali schools, emerged, each offering slightly varied interpretations of the zakat rules, their understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah, the Prophet's traditions. This wasn't about contradicting the core principles. Rather, it was a natural of adapting the fundamental principles to the rapidly changing economic realities of the expanding Muslim world. For example, the rise of sophisticated financial instruments like trade and banking naturally led to discussions on whether and how zakat should apply to these new forms of wealth. Imagine the debates. Does zakat apply to profits from a merchant's trade? What about the value of a business itself? These weren't simple questions with straightforward answers. It took centuries of scholarly discourse to create a framework that felt both fair and consistent with the initial spirit of zakat. Throughout history, the practical implementation of zakat also went through various phases. In some periods, centralized state mechanisms handled the collection and distribution, similar to a modern tax system. In other eras, especially in more decentralized societies or times of political instability, community-based structures played a larger role, relying on local leaders and religious scholars to ensure zakat reached those in need. Furthermore, the very definition of who constitutes a deserving recipient has also been subject to debate and evolution. While the core categories remained consistent, the specific needs of changing societies often influenced the application of these categories. For instance, during periods of widespread famine or natural disasters, the might shift towards emergency relief efforts, expanding the scope of zakat's reach beyond its traditional recipients. So, the story of zakat isn't just a static set of rules. It's a dynamic of interpretation and adaptation. It reflects the constant interplay between religious principles, legal scholarship, and the lived experiences of Muslim communities throughout history. It's a powerful testament to the enduring effort to reconcile faith with the practical challenges of building a just and compassionate society. It continues to evolve even today, grappling with the complexities of a globalized world and the unique challenges of contemporary societies. That's what makes it so interesting. A living, breathing part of Islamic history, continually shaped by the ongoing dialogue between faith and the realities of human life. Hey, so, we were talking about zakat the other day, right? The obligatory charity in Islam? Well, let's dive a little deeper because it's way more fascinating than you might think. It's not just a simple, give 2.5% of your wealth thing, it's got a seriously rich history. And the interpretation and practice have changed and adapted dramatically throughout the centuries. Think about it. The early Muslim community in Medina, small, tightly knit, facing real struggles for survival. Zakat then was incredibly practical. It was directly about redistribution of wealth, ensuring everyone had the basics. Imagine a community where res were shared to a far greater extent than what we see in modern society. It wasn't just about money, it was food, livestock, even things like dates and grain. It was a system designed to create social cohesion and economic stability within a vulnerable group. It was a literal lifeline. The caliphate expanded rapidly after that, right? The empire grew, and with it, the complexity of zakat. You had vastly different regions, different economic structures, different levels of wealth. Suddenly, you're not just dealing with a small group of farmers and traders. You are dealing with vast agricultural lands, bustling cities, and burgeoning trade routes. How do you apply the same principles of zakat to that kind of scale? That's where things get really interesting. Different schools of thought emerged, different interpretations of the Quran and the Sunnah. The Prophet Muhammad's teachings and practices. Some scholars erred on precise calculations of wealth, meticulously defining what constituted nisab, the minimum threshold of wealth requiring zakat. Others prioritized the spirit of the law, emphasizing the importance of generosity and social responsibility above strict adherence to the letter of the law. You had debates about what precisely constituted wealth. Did it include livestock, crops, precious metals, business profits? What about things like intellectual property, which is a more modern concept? The answers varied depending on the region and the prevailing economic conditions, leading to different interpretations over time. Imagine the scholars debating these points. Passionate discussions, arguments weaving through centuries. It wasn't always peaceful, either. Political power often intertwined with religious authority. Different rulers and dynasties might favor certain interpretations of zakat that benefited their political agendas. For example, a ruler might relax the regulations to appease a powerful merchant class, or tighten them to redistribute wealth to support the state or a favored group. This political influence really impacted how zakat was understood and practiced. It wasn't just a theological discussion. It was a reflection of power dynamics and societal structures. Then you have the impact of different cultures. Islam spread across continents, interacting with existing economic and social systems. You find zakat being adapted and interpreted in the corn of different societies. In rural areas, it remained closely tied to agricultural production, while in urban centers, it took on a more complex form, involving a wider range of assets and charitable activities. Think about how the different cultures already present in the vast Islamic empire also influenced their respective zakat systems. These varied systems often coexisted peacefully, showcasing the adaptable nature of zakat itself. Now, fast forward to modern times. We still grapple with the same questions: what constitutes wealth in the age of digital assets and global finance? How do we ensure fairness and equity in a world of vast economic disparities? And how do we maintain the spirit of zakat, that sense of social responsibility and community support, within modern institutional frameworks? The interpretations are still evolving. You find more emphasis now on transparency and accountability in zakat collection and distribution. There are ongoing debates on how to effectively use zakat funds to address modern challenges like poverty, education, and healthcare. We are also seeing technological innovations impacting its implementation. For instance, online platforms and apps dedicated to facilitating zakat payments and tracking their usage. So, the story of zakat isn't just a dry recitation of religious laws. It's a dynamic reflection of the changing societal needs and interpretations throughout history. It's a testament to the adaptability of Islamic law and its ongoing relevance in addressing social and economic issues. It's a story of power, politics, and the ever-evolving attempt to balance the needs of individuals and the welfare of the community. It's a story worth exploring further. Okay, so we've been chatting about all sorts of things, and we ended up on zakat. It's fascinating, right? It's not just a religious obligation. It's a whole story. A living thing that's changed and adapted over centuries. It really holds a key place in Islamic history. And that's what makes it so compelling. Imagine the early days of Islam. Picture a small community, struggling to survive, to build a new society, faith and justice. Zakat, right from the start, wasn't just about giving money. It was about forging this community. It was about leveling the playing field, ensuring everyone had a basic level of sustenance. It was incredibly practical. Think about it. You are dealing with desert nomads and fledgling urban centers. So ensuring food security and basic needs were met was vital. The initial was very much on tangible goods. Dates, livestock, grain, things that were directly related to survival in that environment. The rules were relatively straightforward, because the corn was relatively simple. But as Islam spread, things got complicated. The scale of the empire exploded, and so did the complexity of the economy. You now had merchants dealing in silk, spices, and gold from across continents. Suddenly, you couldn't just count camels and sacks of wheat. You needed to figure out how zakat applied to these new, far more abstract forms of wealth. That's where the scholarly debate started to really pick up. Think of these early Islamic scholars as the original tax lawyers, except their work had profound spiritual implications. They wrestled with questions that still resonate today. How do you calculate zakat on a merchant's fluctuating inventory? What about land ownership? What counts as wealth that's subject to zakat? Is it only surplus income? Or does it include everything above a basic living standard? These weren't trivial arguments. They shaped the very fabric of the society, defining fairness and social responsibility. Different schools of thought emerged, like the Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali schools, each interpreting the Quran and the Sunnah, the Prophet Muhammad's teachings and practices, in slightly different ways. Their interpretations weren't always harmonious, leading to variations in the specific calculations and the categories of wealth included. It wasn't like a single, universally agreed upon tax. It was a dynamic, reflecting the diverse cons and economic realities across the vast Islamic world. And the evolution didn't stop there. As societies modernized, new challenges arose. The Industrial Revolution, global trade, the rise of modern finance. Each wave brought new questions about zakat's application. What about stocks and bonds? What about intellectual property? What about digital assets? These weren't issues the early scholars could have foreseen. But the spirit of zakat, its core purpose of social justice and wealth redistribution, remained. Over time, different interpretations emerged to grapple with the challenges of a more complex globalized economy. Some scholars favored conservative approaches, sticking to more traditional interpretations, while others advocated for more flexible, modern applications that better reflected the complexities of the modern world. This ongoing dialogue is a testament to the enduring relevance of zakat. Its ability to adapt while holding true to its fundamental principles. And the way zakat was administered evolved too. In the early days, it was often collected directly by the Islamic State and distributed to the needy through official channels. Over time, different models emerged, involving charitable organizations, community initiatives, and even individual acts of giving inspired by the spirit of zakat. So, as we wrap this up, you can see that zakat is more than just a religious duty. It's a living history lesson in adapting principles to changing times. It's a story of how a fundamental social and economic institution adjusted to the challenges of expanding empire, evolving economies, and vastly different social cons across centuries. It's a testament to the ongoing human endeavor to balance faith, justice, and practical realities. It's a story that continues to unfold, even today, as scholars and communities grapple with how to best apply its timeless principles in our modern world. So, You are asking what the evolving interpretations and practices of zakat throughout Islamic history teach us today. It's a fascinating question, and honestly, a huge topic. It's not just about giving money. It's about so much more. Let's dive in. Think about it. Zakat, one of the 5 pillars of Islam, was established right at the beginning, during the time of the Prophet Muhammad. Peace be upon him. Back then, it was pretty straightforward. Basically, a certain percentage of your wealth, if it reached a specific threshold, nisab, was given to the needy, the poor, and for various societal needs. Think of it as a kind of early social security and welfare system, all rolled into one, divinely ordained. But here's the thing, life and empire don't stay static. As Islam spread across vast regions, from the Arabian Peninsula to Persia, North Africa, and beyond, the understanding and implementation of zakat inevitably changed. Different schools of thought, different legal interpretations, FIQH, emerged, influenced by local cons and economic realities. Imagine the early caliphate, this burgeoning Islamic empire, expanding rapidly. Suddenly, you are dealing with different types of wealth, not just camels and dates, but also land, agricultural produce, and eventually, even businesses and complex financial instruments. Suddenly, figuring out exactly what constitutes wealth subject to zakat becomes a lot more complicated. Should you calculate zakat on the value of a farm? Or the annual yield? What about merchants' profits? This led to scholarly debates that lasted for centuries, shaping different schools of Islamic jurisprudence, like the Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali schools, that offered diverse, yet equally valid, interpretations of the zakat rules. Then there's the matter of who receives the zakat. In the early days, it was largely aimed on direct relief, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked. But as societies evolved, the scope of zakat expanded. Think about it. If you have a thriving community, you need to invest in infrastructure, education, and public works. So, some scholars argued that zakat could legitimately be used to support these wider societal needs. Building mosques, funding schools, even supporting the army in times of war, as long as it ultimately benefits the vulnerable. This is where things get really interesting. The way zakat was collected and distributed also changed. In the early days, it was a relatively simple, with community leaders playing a crucial role. But as empire grew, centralized systems evolved, with appointed officials overseeing the collection and disbursement of zakat. This naturally introduced new challenges, the potential for corruption, and sometimes led to debates on fairness and transparency. Now, imagine the impact of colonialism on zakat. The imposition of foreign economic systems drastically affected wealth accumulation and distribution. The traditional methods of zakat collection might no longer fit the complex financial reality created by these foreign systems. This led to further adaptations and reinterpretations of the zakat system. And here's the point we need to reflect on. This entire historical journey of zakat, with its evolving interpretations and practices, teaches us incredible resilience and adaptability. It shows us how Islamic principles, while rooted in timeless values, can be applied creatively to address the ever-changing needs of societies. It reveals the ongoing intellectual engagement with the faith and its practical implications. What does it mean for us today? Well, it reminds us that zakat is not a static ritual, but a dynamic of social responsibility. It urges us to engage critically with the spirit of zakat, its core purpose of sharing wealth. justly in promoting social justice, rather than getting bogged down in the technical details alone. We need to consider how Zakat can address the modern challenges of poverty, inequality, and social exclusion. This could mean supporting microfinance initiatives that empower entrepreneurs, funding educational projects in underserved communities, or contributing to disaster relief efforts. It also highlights the importance of scholarly discourse and dialogue. Just as scholars across centuries engaged in debates to refine the understanding of Zakat, we too need to continue discussing and adapting its application in our contemporary con. We must find ways to make the of Zakat more transparent and efficient, ensuring that the funds reach those who need them most. Ultimately, the evolving story of Zakat is a testament to Islam's capacity to adapt while staying true to its core values. It's a story of community, responsibility, and constant striving to build a more just and equitable world. And that, my friend, is a lesson we can, and should, carry forward into the future. Khuda Hafij, may Allah bless us all. That's the tale for today.